Hello and welcome to the Command Phase. My name is Mark and thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're a parent, family member or partner of a wargamer, buying a Christmas present for them can be a stressful task, with there being so many different gaming systems, armies within each, brands of hobby essentials like paints, brushes and glue, alongside a plethora of novels and merchandise. It can often get very overwhelming to make sure you pick something they will want and enjoy. In this Wargamer Christmas gift guide, we're going to break down hobby gifts that I'm sure any wargamer will appreciate at Christmas time and at a variety of budgets to suit everyone. We'll have ideas for stocking fillers under £10, mid-range of under £50, and then more expensive gifts for the special people in your life over £50. If you find this useful, please hit that like and subscribe button as it costs you nothing and makes a huge difference. Plus, if you have any ideas for presents I haven't covered here, pop them in the comment section below to help out fellow buyers. So without any further ado, let's get stuck in. Wargaming is a hobby that can get very expensive very quickly, so being able to find a gift cheaper is always great. Depending where you live, there will be a variety of local gaming stores across the country that do offer Games Workshop products at a discount of up to 20%. Do take these into consideration when looking for gifts, as with money being tight for many this year, it'll certainly help. There's also of course Amazon too for a fair number of items on this list. I've popped a link in the description below for a list of stores with locations of where they are. If anybody knows any further, pop them down in the comment section below, as it'll be a huge help to people buying presents this year. Every wargamer will never say no to getting some new plastic models as a present, but without them telling you which armies they collect or specifically which models they're after, it's often difficult to pick the correct thing for them, especially with there being such a massive variety of gaming systems out there. My advice here is if you know they'd like models but you're unsure of which, get them a gift voucher from a local discount hobby store so they can put it towards the models they'd really like. That way you can avoid any disappointment on the day and they can always jump onto the internet and order them there and then. So starting off with the stocking fillers of under £10, we have a few items that will go down a treat. First up is glue. As a wargamer, there is always a new model being released we want to get our hands on, or another unit for a growing army, and needless to say, every project needs glue. There are a few varieties that are useful, but the main being plastic glue. These are used to bond the plastic material together for a stronger connection than using super glue to build them. Games Workshop do their own Citadel plastic glue which does the job, while another that is highly recommended is Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. Superglue is another useful product, and to be fair, you can't go wrong here with any of the typical brands you'd find online. This is useful for a whole manner of hobby needs like basing, gluing together non-plastic models, and pinning. Speaking of pinning, getting a hand drill is a useful gift, as the different sized drill bits help for jobs like pinning and drilling out gun barrels on models. Sticking with the building stages of model making, getting some green stuff and sculpting tools for their next project is a fun little stocking filler. Whether this is just to fill in the gaps on the models left behind from construction, or sculpting on fur and accessories onto the model. Green stuff is always useful to have in your hobby arsenal. If the hobbyist is like me, they like to keep all the extra bits they don't end up using building their models for potentially kit bashing models later on. Or in my case, being very thankful I didn't throw away a specific gun recently I needed for my army. Getting something like a hobby storage box with separate compartments that can be removed if needed is a great way to save space from keeping the sprues with just a few pieces on them, and it's easy to find the bit you're looking for. I currently have about 5 of these for all the different armies that I collect. Another gift I'm sure most hobbyists will be happy to see are basing materials for their armies. Starting with texture paints, you can get smaller pots like Astrogranite and Valhalla Blizzard from Games Workshop Citadel range, to the larger and more cost-effective Vallejo Earth texture range. There are loads of different options for these and make for very straightforward basing for models. I'm a big fan of the Valhalla Blizzard myself for snow bases, albeit making a light dusting here rather than full coverage. Next we have the more traditional basing materials like sand, small rocks, flock and so on, which are really useful and will go down well, to grass tufts like these from Army Painter, which come in a variety of options. For a bit more money, you can get one of these Army Painter basing kits which come with a variety of options plus PVA glue, which is always handy. Last of the basing materials I'd recommend is a roll of cork sheet. This is great for breaking up and making it into a variety of broken rocky grounds to add some depth and variation to the sand texture paste combo. Next up we have paints and washes, and this is a somewhat challenging one with so many different brands and lines available to purchase. That being said, something I'm sure we won't ever turn down. You have of course the Citadel range from Games Workshop with their traditional paints, contrast paint range and shades, which I must admit you can't really go wrong with a pot of Agrax Earthshade or Nuln Oil. And then you have Vallejo, who make the fantastic Air Metal colour range, which is honestly one of the best metallics I've ever painted with. Army Painter come up next, which makes some excellent washes alongside their speed paints, and then you've got Pro Acryl as well, which is another one that's highly regarded, especially this bold titanium white. Plus many other hobby paint ranges to buy from. If you know which brand they tend to paint with, obviously go with that, but it's something we all like to experiment with. One extra paint to take into consideration is something like this Dirty Down Rust to create a weathering effect on their models. It's something else to take into consideration if you aren't sure which brand the recipient uses. One tool I'm sure a lot of players would have wanted with their Nuln Oil or contrast paints to avoid the accident that we've all done by knocking it over and spilling it everywhere is getting a Citadel paint pot holder. This does exactly what it says on the tin and a decent job to avoid that accident happening ever again. Then we have a painting tool in the form of a pipette. These are pretty handy for creating mixes of paints that require following certain recipes, bringing in clean water, or even washes and contrast paints out of the Citadel pots due to the lack of dropper bottle. Last of all, we have a paint water pot. Now there is the Citadel one if they're fans of Games Workshop, which will do the trick, plus there are other fine art ones that also act as a brush holder on top, or even a funny mug combination if you want to spend a little more. It may well stop them drinking their paint water instead of their hot beverage, which is a gift in itself. Moving up to the next bracket, we have a few more substantial gifts, beginning with the modelling side of the hobby. Being given a nice pair of nippers like this Tamiya fine pointed plastic cutters is a great gift. While these are a little more pricey than the pair they may well already have, if the recipient does end up getting some nice new plastic toy soldiers as a gift, these will go down very well. There are plenty of other options out there as well if you wanted a different brand. Then we have a trusty hobby knife, which in essence is just an X-Acto blade, and again using Tamiya as the example, you get a fair size of spare size 11 blades as well. These are great for cutting off excess using either a blunt blade or the reverse side to remove mold lines and any other cutting required, which is where a self-healing cutting mat would pair up really well with. Not only to stop them cutting into their desk or table, but to also protect the surface from any spillages too. Giving a model a really nice base can take it to the next level, and picking up these textured rolling pins from Green Stuff World can really add some extra quality and details to their bases, with a wide variety of designs available to suit any army style. But if you wanted to take it one step further, getting custom resin bases from the likes of Unreal Wargaming Studios like these Urban Rubble or Sacred Ruin sets really do add an immense amount of detail and character. These can get fairly expensive, but there are a lot of companies around that make a whole manner of designs and some really amazing looking bases. These are perfect for character or centerpiece models to really stand out. Now, something no hobbyist would ever turn down as a present is being given some really nice paintbrushes. There are a few options here, but giving a gift of a really nice brush or two will go a lot further than the typical Games Workshop options. While these are more expensive, they are made from better materials and will last a lot longer if looked after. Winsor & Newton Series 7, Raphael 8404 and Artist Opus are just a few of these high quality brushes that are worth picking up. You can't go wrong with either a size 1 or 2 to give them an all-rounder brush with a nice tip for detail work. There are sets available for some of these brands which can take us up into the next price bracket of gift if you wanted to spend a little more. There are synthetic options if you aren't happy with buying Kolinsky hair paint brushes, and they are the Games Workshop STC brushes. They are a good quality and come in a variety of options with either base and layer brushes as well. Of course, there are other brands out there that may well be better, but I've personally not tried all that many synthetic brushes. If you do end up picking up some high quality brushes, an essential partner to this would be some brush soap to keep them clean and look after them for their longevity. Another popular style of brushes are dry brushes to utilise in a painter's arsenal. There are some good ones available from Army Painter or Artist Opus, but believe it or not, a pack of makeup brushes will do just as good, if not a better job, and cheaper overall. You'll want to make sure there are a few different sized rounded heads like this example, and they'll go a long way. If you aren't comfortable buying these for them, any of the previously mentioned dry brushes are great options. Next up, we have some paint sets. Similar to earlier, we have a variety of paints available. If they are a seasoned wargamer, maybe picking up some interesting paints they may not normally think of, like this colour shifting set from Vallejo, may well add some fun options to their paint schemes. The Speed Paint 2.0 set from the Army Painter range is a great way to try out an easier way of painting, which is perfect for beginners, or even a Vallejo Air Metal colour set, which again I can't speak highly enough of. Now, if you wanted to get something a little different, then a set of oil paints like this Winsor & Newton set will go down well for those hobbyists like me that have watched a fair few videos from the likes of Marco Frazzoni and wanted to give it a crack. This would be a very useful addition to any painter's arsenal. Last of the paint supplies would be to get them a rattle can or two. These are essential to prime miniatures quickly if they don't already do so with an airbrush, or even get a first base coat down on the models themselves. They come in a variety of colours from the likes of Games Workshop or Colourforge, which have an excellent colour matching system to the Citadel range. There are also plenty of cheaper alternatives available. If you do end up going down a speed paint or contrast paint route, the Wraithbone or a white primer would be the one to go for. Next up is an essential painting accessory that, to be honest, I couldn't do without now, and that is a wet palette. Being able to keep your paints wet for longer, especially with mixes during a long painting session, is so handy. There are loads of options available to you with the likes of Army Painter and Redgrass Games' Everlasting Wet Palette. Both of these come in a standard and XL size to suit any painter. Now, for all those players that make paint recipes and then forget what it is when they come back to their project later on, a nice notebook may well be the gift for them. Whether it's a typical Moleskine to a leather-bound refillable option to picking their favourite faction from the Warhammer website. Loads of options available to put down the paint swatches or write the recipe down, or even just to write army lists and other bits and pieces in. A painting handle is next, and this is something I much prefer using over holding the miniature by its base. This just adds some extra stability when painting. I actually use the Citadel versions myself with both the standard size and the larger one for bigger models or monsters, but another option would be the Redgrass Games one, where you can spin the model round with the top part of it rather than having to do so manually, which could well come in handy. This next gift is for someone you know who has complained more than once about Citadel paint pots and prefers dropper bottles. To help them out, you can purchase some empty dropper bottles for them to decant their paint into, which I must admit I did do just to make my life easier when airbrushing. The necessary purchase with this is the addition of non-rust ball bearings like this Army Painter set to pop into the bottles before doing so. This will help mix the paints up better when shaking them. Now, this may look a tad goofy, so might not be for the person that takes themselves too seriously, but these magnifying glasses are a great way to really see all the fine details on the model that you may not be able to well with the naked eye, without getting into a rather uncomfortable painting position. I do own a pair and have had a giggle or two from my wife when she saw them, but they certainly do work. If you know they're going to be a little more self-conscious about this, then a magnifying lamp would be a great solution. If you can make sure you get one with multiple temperature settings for the lighting, that would be a massive help for them to see the actual colours that they're painting. Does the person you're buying for post a lot of images on Instagram of their painted models? Well, then picking up a rotating display stand for them to film some really nice 360 videos will go down a treat. There are plenty of options available, although I probably steer clear of the mirror-topped ones. The last of the painted related gifts would be a form of paint storage or organizer. I'm sure a lot of hobbyists out there throw all of their paints into a drawer and then spend a while rummaging through to find the one they need, or have them spread all over their desk. Getting something like this nail varnish rack either a table stand in or wall mounted gives you a great storage solution to be able to see them all clearly and makes life easier when trying to find the right paint you need. Moving on to the gaming side of the hobby, and we have a few nice gift options for the budding player. One thing you can't go wrong with is some nice D6 dice. Chessex and Paladin make some nice cheaper options in a wide variety of colours and styles to suit any player. If you know their favourite faction, for a little more money, Baron of Dice make a whole host of great options with each army in mind. Now, how about something nice to roll them all in rather than all over the table? Then a nice dice tray would come in handy. There are a few varieties, ones that clip together to make transporting them easier, or solid ones like this from Ultra Pro. Not only does this stop the dice going everywhere, but also stops you accidentally knocking models over or losing them on the floor. Next up is objective markers for their chosen game, whether this is Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar or Kill Team as examples. Getting some nice designed markers to clearly show where the objective is makes for a nice game piece to own. If you wanted something a little more bespoke, then this is where a place like Etsy comes in. If you know their favourite factions, you can always get any hobby accessory made up with the likes of a custom dice tray, personalised tape measure, and yes, this is one of the few times you could buy someone a tape measure as a present and them not being a little disappointed. Plus, custom objective markers and more. The lead time might be a bit longer, but having something personal to them would go down nicely. Then of course you have creators merchandise. If you hear them talking about watching the likes of Tabletop Titans or Tabletop Tactics as an example, they have gift options themselves with dice with their logos on, to a few other bits and pieces like clothing. Something I'm sure would take their fancy if you know they enjoy watching them. Then of course you have the official Warhammer merchandise. Loads of the usual options for gifts, from mugs, clothing including some rather spiffy Christmas jumpers, to some really nice artwork for the wall. Some of these pieces can get rather pricey, but if they have a favourite faction, it might well be something to consider. Then of course you have Displate, which has just brought out a large range of metal Warhammer artwork which honestly does look really cool. Lots of options for a wide range of gamers who want to show off their love of their hobby outside of their armies. Last up is the lore aspect of the hobby that players do enjoy, and the Black Library has a huge range of books to get stuck into. Whether it's the Horus Heresy, Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar, there will be something that they will enjoy. On screen are just a few recommendations of books to get started with in each of these universes, but there are plenty more to choose from. If, like me, they enjoy listening to audiobooks while hobbying or on their daily commute, then getting them a gift subscription for a few months or so to Audible might well be a good option here. With a few different price points and a wide selection of Warhammer books, I'm sure they'll be able to find one they enjoy. And now we get to the over £50 mark for gifts, and honestly, these will end up being for someone you're very close to and may well have an idea of what they do hobby-wise, as I'm sure they've told you many times about all their projects. Definitely wouldn't recommend any of these as a Secret Santa gift, that's for sure. First up, we have a pretty useful tool for a whole manner of things both inside and outside the hobby, and that is a Dremel rotary tool. Whether it's drilling out gun barrels to building terrain, this tool can do a huge amount, even around the house as well. I'm not gonna lie, this would have made sanding down the connections to the Kill Team Gallo Dart terrain a lot faster. Has the person you're buying for ever bought miniatures off eBay or, like me, changed their minds on paint jobs only to strip them off in a bath of Dettol or Simple Green and scrubbed it all off with a toothbrush to start again? Well, something you wouldn't think of to be a great present to buy them would be an ultrasonic cleaner. Typically you'd end up seeing something like this as a jeweler, but it'll do a great job of getting the paint off all those models a lot faster, which, if they're anything like me, would be greatly appreciated. Back to something a little more traditional hobby tool wise, and that is a good daylight lamp to create a neutral lighting setting. Whether this is freestanding or what I've enjoyed using is a clamp on an arm you can easily move around. The main reason for getting a light like this is to have consistency of the colours that you can see when painting. There's nothing worse than having a long painting session just using natural light which shifts during the day, and you end up thinking certain colours look great in the late afternoon when there's a warmer tone, or even under a traditional lamp, only for you to be unhappy the next day seeing it in a different lighting condition. This just allows you to create a constant when painting and help you to see the model better as well. Ever seen this hobbyist shaking their paint pots wildly to mix up the paint in the bottles? Well, a vortex mixer might well be the present for them. You'll typically see these online with images of test tubes, but this will vibrate the paint pots at a higher speed to mix up the paints for better consistency when painting in a faster time. This is very much a luxury gift, but one I'm sure any painter will appreciate. Would the person you're buying for want to take their painting to the next level? Going to someone like Seed Studios, who offers painting lessons and workshops, may well be a great option for them, whether this is being online or in person. I know myself that this would be a really valuable experience to help improve my painting and speed me up, as I'm sure it would be valuable to many other hobbyists as well that really enjoy this aspect of the hobby. For those that just like the gaming side, maybe want to avoid here. Now, the next two items really are on the pricey side, and that is an airbrush and compressor if they haven't already gotten into that aspect of the hobby. It opens up a lot of avenues and ways to paint models and can really improve the quality as well. Even if it's just a way to prime and get a smooth base coat, it's a really handy tool, especially for some of those tricky colours that take a lot of coats to get complete coverage. This is perfect as well for creating smooth gradients, especially on larger vehicles too. While these can get pretty expensive, something like an Iwata Eclipse is a great airbrush that they can grow into that isn't at the top end of the price point. In terms of compressor, it's not as necessary to spend crazy money on this to start with, but something like this Fender with a separate air tank, moisture tap, and being pretty quiet for a compressor is what I'd end up looking to pick up. Anything under 50 decibels is actually pretty good, to be honest, for an airbrush, and it won't be constantly running. This is the one I've used since I started airbrushing, and it served me really well for what I've needed. Moving on to gaming gifts, and these last two ideas really help take gaming boards and games to the next level. First up is picking up a high quality game mat to play on. Game Mat EU makes some really high quality durable mats with a variety of different styles, including double-sided ones to help mix up the battlefield that you're playing on. For Warhammer 40k for example, you'll want a 60 by 44 size, but do check online the size of mat needed for the game system that they typically play. And to add to the immersion with their nicely painted models is some nice terrain. You've got a lot of options here, from some MDF terrain, which is good on the budget side with the companies like TT Wargames, to some plastic kits like this from Terrain Crate that can be painted up to make for a nice quality board, or even get them painted up terrain if you know they won't fancy to do it for a bit extra. There are loads of options here to really help make an interesting board to play on that'll certainly add to the immersion, and this is a great option. So there we have a list of a fair number of gifts for the Wargamer in your life. Hopefully you found something here that you'll want to pick up for them. Let me know in the comment section below which gift you'd like to get, and if you have any ideas for presents I haven't covered here, pop them in the comment section below to help out fellow buyers. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It costs you nothing and helps the channel out a lot. Thank you so much for watching the command phase, and I'll see you in the next video.